Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhireeditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadadatam Bhuvigrunanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Makatitha, recorded by M. Mahendranath Gupta, who is called Master Mahashaya because he was a school teacher. The first meeting, March 1882, M goes to the master's room for the first time and listens to Sri Ramakrishna giving a divine discourse. Sri Ramakrishna always dwelt in God, contemplated on God, thought of God, dreamt God, spoke of God. His whole being was immersed in God consciousness. He knew nothing else but God. So it appeared to M as if Shuka is discoursing on the Bhagavatam to Parikshit, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, great incarnation of love in the recent times, was discussing divine matters, godly matters with his disciples and companions in the Puri Kshetra. Sri Ramakrishna was talking about when karma or work drops out. He said, when one chants the name of God even once, if tears spontaneously roll down his cheeks and there's a horripilation all over his body and all the hairs stand on end, you may know and realize that he doesn't need to do karma anymore. Karma drops away by itself. Then he says, Shandhyadi karma aar korte hoy na. What kind of karma? Even a religious practice as ritualistic karma, which are religious in nature, like Sandhya, etc., need not be performed by such a person. Then he makes a very profound statement. Then even the name of God also stops, perhaps. And it's enough if he just chants pure Om. Shuddhu Ram va Harinam Athava Shuddha Omkar Jopli hoy. He can chant the name of God simply, or just chant Om. Then he makes an interesting statement, which we are discussing now, which is very profound. Years will pass in trying to understand even a little of the profundity of this statement. What is the statement? Shandha Gayatri te loy hoy, Gayatri abar Omkare loy hoy. Sandhya merges into Gayatri, and again Gayatri merges into Om. What is Sandhya? Sandhya literally means junction, the union. The human mind, which is a part of nature, is deeply influenced and affected by the changes in the external nature. This is the meaning of you are getting affected by the tithis and the nakshatras. Tithis are the phases of the moon. It is well known, it is scientifically documented that the human mind is affected by the phases of the moon. during Purnima and Amavasya, the full moon and the new moon, people who are slightly deranged in brain, they become excessively active and violent. It is known. And therefore, mad people are called lunatics. Luna means the moon. Lunatic is a person who is affected by the moon. And therefore, the external nature, the changes in the external nature and the environment have a tremendous effect on the human mind. The junctions in the external nature, special occasions in the external nature like eclipses, all of them have a deep impact on the human mind. That's why we are asked to fast on tithis like Ekadashi. Ekadashi is the 11th phase of the moon, 11th day, either Shukla Paksha or Krishna Paksha, starting from Purnima, the full moon, the 11th day is Ekadashi. Once again, the 15th day is Amavasya, the new moon. Again, you have the 11th day, which is Ekadashi. So in a month, Ekadashi comes twice, and you're asked to fast, meditate, think of God. In the Ramakrishna tradition, on the days of Ekadashi, we have Ramanama Sankirtan. Because these are special occasions when it has been observed that the mind becomes calmed down and traditionally hundreds of thousands of great sadhakas and saints, spiritual aspirants, illumined souls, for thousands of years have practiced it, having observed the connection between the external nature and the internal mind. Purnima and Amavasya are also considered very special. You know how in the Purnima days certain special observances are being made. Buddha Purnima was the day in which Buddha was supposed to be born. It is called the thrice blessed day, Vaishakhi Purnima. The birth of Buddha, the illumination, the bodha of Buddha, and the parinirvana, the final exit of Buddha. So it is called the thrice blessed day. Dol Purnima, on which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born. Rasa Purnima, where the Bhagavan Sri Krishna had a Rasa Krida with the Gopikas, which is illustrative of the Paramatman playing with the Jivatmas. It is only allegory, Sri Krishna being the Paramatman, all the Gopikas being Prakriti and Jivatma, and the Paramatman is having a wonderful sport, elevating the minds of the Jivatma. That is the meaning of the Rasa Krida of the Gopis. In the Bhagavatam, it is described in detail, Rasa Panchadhyayi, in the Dashamaskandha of the Bhagavatam. These are Purnimas. Amavasya, starting from the 14th night, entering into Amavasya, we perform the Kali Puja, special worship of the Divine Mother, which is also called the Diwali Deepavali, where you light the lamps. It is utter darkness everywhere, being Amavasya, and we lamp the light of knowledge in our hearts to dispel the darkness of ignorance outside. So the phases of the moon affect us, and people who are affected by the phases of the moon, the tithi, are called the lunar type of people. And there are some people who are affected by the ritu, the seasons. They are called the solar people or the sun people. So you have true great dynasties in the Puranas, the Surya Vamsha and the Chandra Vamsha. Surya Vamsha is the solar dynasty, and the Chandra Vamsha, the lunar dynasty. So these are not mere stories in the Puranas. They have very deep philosophical, spiritual and scientific significance. Psychologists and physiologists have discovered that the human physiology and the human psychology is deeply affected by the external nature, and the external nature, two luminaries in the celestial sphere. The one is the sun, the other is the moon, Chandra and Surya. And therefore Chandra Surya are considered the two eyes of the Supreme Virat Purusha. In the Purusha Suktam it is mentioned, Chandra and Surya are the two eyes of the Purusha. Because these are the two which gives light to the world. During daytime it is the Surya, and during the night it is Chandra. The sun and the moon are the two luminaries who give light to this world. And therefore, the relationship between the physiology and the psychology of a human being with the phases of the moon on the one side and the various seasons relating to the sun on the other side have been deeply studied and understood. They have been given a religious coloring, but they are very deeply scientific. Those who are affected by the seasons, or the solar people, as I said, and those who are affected by the phases of the moon, by the tithi, are called the lunar type. And the two devatas, two great deities, gods in the Hindu pantheon, Shiva and Vishnu, are the presiding deities of the sun and the moon. The solar type of people are the Shiva type, and the lunar type are the Vishnu type. In the Sri Sri Ramakrishna Leela Prasanga, the great master, written by Swami Sharadananda ji, one of the illustrious sannyasin disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, it is mentioned that Sri Ramakrishna used to largely divide his followers and devotees into two groups, the Shiva type and the Vishnu type. Even in the household you can see that you can largely find out that your children, your parents, grandparents, relatives, husbands and wives, they can be roughly divided in the solar type and the lunar type. And interestingly, the lunar type and the solar type coming together form a very close, intimate and a harmonious pair. If the husband is the lunar type and the wife is the solar type, they will pair and gel very well. One is the Hara, Shiva, Mahadeva. The other is Hari, who is Mahavishnu. And they are extremely close bosom friends. So there is a phrase which is commonly used in Sanskrit, in any Indian language, Hariharatma. When two people are extremely close to each other, they're bosom friends, kindred souls, they are called Hariharatma, Hariharatma. Two bodies and one soul. One is the Hari, the Hara. In the Ramakrishna tradition, we have glorious example of Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda. Swami Vivekananda is Shiva type, manly, powerful, with a scorching intellect, amazing luminosity, powerfully impacting the human psyche. Like a bombshell, he will come down upon people and awaken them to higher spiritual consciousness. Swami Brahmananda, by contrast, gentle like the moonlight, sweet, kind, soothing, elevating, and giving extremely gentle but powerful spiritual energy. The Vishnu type, the Narayana. Sri Ramakrishna called Swami Brahmananda a chip of Sri Krishna. He was the eternal companion of Sri Krishna. He was the Krishna Sakha. So these two people, the two illustrious first disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who was Ramakrishna's own, as if Ramakrishna had become one with both of them, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda, shaped the entire Ramakrishna tradition with the benign blessings of Sharada Devi, the Shakti of Sri Ramakrishna. This is an extraordinary study in itself. It's highly mystical, spiritual, scientifically understandable, and extremely rewarding and elevating. Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda apparently were just of contrasting natures. When Swami Brahmananda took charge of Belur Math as the president, after the passing away in Mahasamadhi of Swami Vivekananda on the 4th of July 1902, many of the followers and disciples of Swami Vivekananda are puzzled at the method of work of Swami Brahmanandaji. None of the dynamism, none of the tremendous activity, none of the throwing bombs, calm, gentle, meditative, and constantly inward looking. Apparently just the opposite of what Swami Vivekananda himself was. So much so, a young monk, disciple of Swami Vivekananda perhaps, tongue-in-cheek remarked, Maharaj has spoiled Swamiji's work. Maharaj meaning Swami Brahmananda, Swamiji meaning Swami Vivekananda. Swami Satswarupananda, one of the great scholar monks of our order and the editor of Prabuddha Bharata journal, mentions this and says, this remark, though childish and foolish, deserves careful examination. It appeared as if Swami Vivekananda was acting in contrast to Swami Vivekananda. None of the dynamism, none of the power, manifestation, none of that tremendous bomb throwing and devastating the old preconceived petrified, fossilized notions, but extremely calm and gentle, but withal gently transforming the human personalities. As Swami Vivekananda once said, talking about Indian culture and civilization, that the gentle dew that falls unseen and unheard, yet brings into blossom the fairest of roses, has been the contribution of India to the thought current of the world. That was Swami Brahmananda. He was the lunar type, the Vishnu type, and Swami Vivekananda was solar type, the Shiva type. These two great Vamshas, Surya Vamsha and Chandra Vamsha, respectively gave rise to two great avatars who dominate the entire spiritual civilization, culture, ethos, heritage, legacy of India. Sri Ramachandra and Sri Krishna. Rama and Krishna are the two great, powerful incarnations of God, avatars. Rama belonged to the Surya Vamsha and Krishna belonging to Chandra Vamsha. And in this age, we believe, Sri Ramakrishna came combining in himself, blending in himself, synthesizing in himself, harmonizing into himself Rama and Krishna. As he himself clearly, unambiguously articulated to Narendranath, almost the last days of his life. Jai Ram, Jai Krishna, Shai Idaning Ramakrishna, Kindu Tor Vedanter Dike Noy. He who was Rama and he who was Krishna is in this body Ramakrishna, but not in a Vedantic sense. In the Vedantic sense, there is no avatar. Everybody is an avatar. We are the Supreme Brahman, and the question of avatara doesn't arise. Avatara is also only of Shakti. Shaktiri avatar, Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, the avatara is of Shakti. Shakti samudra samutsatarangam darshita prema vijrumbhitarangam samshaya rakshasanasha mahastram yami gurum Sharanam Bhavavaidyam. The beautiful hymn which Swami Vivekananda wrote about Sri Ramakrishna, his Guru. He does not mention Ramakrishna's name, he calls him the Yami Gurum Bhavavaidyam. The Guru is Bhavavaidya. He is the great physician to cure us of the chronic disease of worldliness, the samsara we are suffering from. For millions of years, this disease is with us, and the Bhavavaidya, the physician to cure us of the disease of worldliness, is with us. Who is he? Shakti Samudra Samutha Tarangam. He is a huge wave in the ocean of Shakti. Shakti is Mahamaya, Shakti is Ishwari, Shakti is the power of Brahman, Shakti is Jagadamba, she is Kali, she is Durga, call her by any name. She is Brahma Shakti. She is also called the Mahamaya. She is called Avyakta. Avyakta Namni Paramesha Shakti Anadya Vidya Trigunatmika Para Karyanumeya Sudhyaiva Maya Yaya Jagat Sarvamidam Prasuyate. Sri Shankaracharya and the Viveka Chudamani, that wonderful text on Vedanta, talks about this in such a poetic fashion. Avyakta Namni Paramesha Shakti. She is called Avyakta, she is Paramesha Shakti. Anadya Vidya, she is Avidya, she is Mahamaya. At the same time, she is Vidya Swarupini. Trigunatmika Para. She is supreme and she is made of Trigunatmika, Sattva Rajas Tamas. Not that she possesses three gunas. She is not gunavati, but she is gunatmika. She is of the essence of the three gunas. Karya anumeya. She cannot be known as the karana, which she is, but she can be inferred from the karya, from the effects that she produces. Karya anumeya, sudhaiva maya. She is called by the sudhi, by enlightened ones, illumined ones, awakened rishis as Maya. And who is she? Yaya Vishvamidam Prasuyate. She is the person who gives birth to all the worlds. She is the person who gives birth to all the worlds, all of us. The entire creation comes from her womb. She is the Brahma Yoni, and she preserves all of us, protects us, and she also destroys the entire world. Srishti sthiti pralay kore ma katakhe heri avar ananta brahmando rakhen udara puriye sheki emni meyer meye. Ramaprasad's famous song. Ramakrishna was very fond of this. Srishti, Sthiti and Pralaya, origination, sustenance, and again dissolution. These three are performed by Divine Mother. Mahamaya, Kali, Durga. And she cannot be called Sat or Asat, Sanga or Ananga, this or that, existing or non-existing, with parts or without parts, separate or one. She is wonderful and she is anirvachaniya, indescribable. Sangapyananga shubhayatmikano bhinnapyabhinna shubhayatmikano. Vivekananda, Mahadbhuta Anirvachaniya Rupa. So this Mahamaya, she is the power of Brahman. So in the Vedantic sense, there cannot be an avatara, it's only avatars come from Shakti. So Sri Ramakrishna says, he who was Rama and he who was Krishna is in this body, embodied as Ramakrishna. So solar type and the lunar type, Surya Vamsha and Chandra Vamsha, together coming to Sri Ramakrishna. As a proof of this, as an illustration of this, to understand this, we can immediately go back to Ramakrishna's own life. The father, Khudiram Chattopadhyay, had a vision in Gaya where he saw Vishnu coming and telling him, I will be born as your son. And Khudiram became frightened. Oh Lord, I am a very, very poor Brahmin. I cannot take good care of you. The Lord himself is coming as my son. How can I take care of you, O Lord? Then Vishnu told him, you don't have to worry. I will take care of everything, but I will be born as your son. He came back from Gaya and told his wife, this is the dream I had. And Chandramani Devi was surprised, astonished. See, I went to the Shiva temple in Kamarpukur. Even now it is there, Jogi Shiva temple, just in the ashrama, very near. Chandramani Devi went to worship Shiva, and suddenly she saw waves of luminosity, bright light, emerging from the Shivalinga and overwhelming her and entering in her womb. she fell down unconscious. She lost consciousness. And when she came back to normal consciousness and came home, she realized she was carrying a child. She was completely flabbergasted. She narrated this incident to her husband Khudiram, who said, "Don't tell it to anybody." The deep mystical significance. The Lord Himself is coming as our child. Vishnu promised the father that he is coming as the child, and Shiva entered the womb of the mother as the child. So Sri Ramakrishna is a combination of Shiva and Vishnu, respectively representing the solar and the lunar types, whose illustrious types of incarnations of God, avatars, are Rama and Krishna. So these are deep mystical things in Ramakrishna's life. So when the moon comes out in the night, the worshippers of Shakti, Mahamaya, they worship Kali, they worship Shakti in the dead of night. From sunset to sunrise is a tantric worship of Mahamaya. Those who are devoted to Tantra, tantric practices, do it at dead of night. In Amavasya, when everything is terribly dark, they go to Mahashmashana, the burial ground or the cremation ground, and perform tantric practices in seclusion. They are esoteric practices, difficult to do, difficult to understand, and unless the mind is extraordinarily pure, completely elevated, unless the mind is so deeply absorbed in God, one has reached a very high state of consciousness. It is impossible for an ordinary aspirant to practice these difficult, esoteric, tantric sadhanas. And during daytime, when the sun is up, those who practice the Vedic rituals, they are active. So these two great traditions, the Vedic tradition on the one hand and the Tantric tradition on the other, these two have been going on for thousands of years in India, and so many hundreds of thousands of saints and sages have realized the supreme truth through both of them. In this age, Sri Ramakrishna practiced both of them. The Vedantic tradition, culminating in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, under the guidance of Totapuri Maharaj, the great Advaita Sannyasi, and the Tantric tradition, a realization of the ultimate truths of the Tantras as Mahamaya, Shakti, under the guidance of Bhairavi Brahmani. Sri Ramakrishna absorbed both of them, practiced them, realized them, and became the embodiment of both Vedic, Vedantic and Tantric traditions and passed it on to all of us. The Sandhya, therefore, is a Vedic tradition, is a ritual, Vedic tradition. As I said, Sandhya means a junction. Just like there are junctions at the turn of the seasons, the Ritu, and the phases of the moon, the Tithi, every day you have the changes taking place. The ancient sages and saints discovered that these junctions have a very special significance in nature. When nature, Prakriti, moves from one phase to another, that junction is of very special spiritual significance for elevating our minds. They therefore said, start with the Pratah Sandhya, where night passes into day. Leave your bed, give up sleep early in the morning at the time of the Brahma Muhurta. Roughly about an hour and a half or 2 hours before sunrise. The Brahma Muhurta, after having a wash, sit down to meditate. That is the Muhurta when night is going to pass into day. Watch the night passing into day. Prakriti is passing the baton, as it were, as in a relay race. The sun is getting the baton from the moon. The moon says, "O sun, now take on from here. I am now going, you take charge of the world." The sun is just about to rise. That is the junction. Pratah Sandhya. The orange-red sun sending its crimson rays on the waters of the Ganges, as if a golden path has been formed, and you stand in the Ganges up to the waist, immersed in water, with folded palms. You pray to the sun as if you can walk over the golden path and catch the sun, who is the symbol of the Hiranyagarbha, the supreme deity of the sun, Surya Narayana. The Adi Daivika aspect of the sun. Dhyeyas sada savitramandala madhyavarti Narayanas sarasijasana sannivishtaha Keyuravan kanakakundalavan Kiriti hari hiranmayavapuh Dhritashankha chakraha. The dhyana mantra for Surya. Then you pray to the sun. The prayer which is given to the sun when you perform the early morning Sandhya Vandana. Sandhya is the junction. Vandana is the worship done at the time of the junction. So you stand in water, purify yourself with water first. Apo Narayana, it is mentioned. Apa means waters. It is Nitya Bahuvachana, always in plural, waters. Narayana is the supreme deity. Apa is called Narayana, the deity himself. Then you pray a beautiful prayer. O waters, you please purify me. I chant this from the Mahanarayana Upanishad in the section 30, Trimsho Anuvaka. Apah punantu prithivim prithvi puta punatu mam punantu brahmanaspatir brahma puta punatu mam yaduchishtamabho ojyam yadvaduscharitam mama sarvam punantu mamopo satam cha pratigraha gaswaha. May this water cleanse my physical body, that is made of earthly substances. Thus purified, may the earthly body purify me, the soul within. May this water purify the guardian of the Vedas, my preceptor. May the purified Vedas taught by the purified teacher purify me. May the Supreme purify me. May the water purified by the Supreme purified me. My defilement, repast and prohibited food and misconduct, if any, and the sin accruing from the acceptance of gifts from persons disapproved by the scripture, from all these may I be absolved. May the waters purify me. Om. It's a great prayer for purification. Remember that the whole of spiritual life is a series of purifications. Your body should be purified, your mind should be purified, your intellect should be purified, your antaratma should be purified. There should be a series of steps to purification. Shuddhi karana. Swami Vivekananda, who has painstakingly compiled these verses from the Mahanarayana Upanishad, wrote a beautiful small commentary based on the Shayana Bhasha in simple Sanskrit and translated the whole of them into English, makes the following comment on this stanza. This section, consisting of 2 stanzas, supplies the formulas employed for purifying ceremoniously a quantity of water through the mouth as a part of midday devotion and also achamana during baths. You can do it the madhyanika sandhya during achamana and also during the bath which you take 3 times in a day. The Hindu boy or girl practicing the Sandhya Vandana takes bath 3 times a day, early in the morning during the Pratah Sandhya, at midday Madhyanika Sandhya, and in the evening Sayam Sandhya. This mantra is chanted. We have been taught about this since childhood, from the age of 7 or 8. Ritualistically, faithfully, we have chanted this. Apa punantu prithivim, prithvi puta punatu mam. The water stands for both the elements and the deity. Intoning this mantra, the Brahmana, the Dvija, twice born, sips a little water in the prescribed form, achamana, with the following ideas in mind. You know what is achamana? You take a small sip of water and sip it. Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu, Om Vishnu. 3 times you chant the name of the Lord and sip water. So what are the ideas you have in mind? They are the following. May I become fit to enjoy the bliss of liberation here in this life through the realization of the Supreme. May that Supreme Being, whose realization I am seeking, for that may I receive instruction, practice reflection and contemplation of the final teachings of the Vedas with my mind and body cleansed of all impurities and sins. To be able to hold the Vedas and the teachings of the Vedas in my body and mind, I have to be absolutely pure. A leaky vessel cannot hold. A broken pot cannot hold. So I have to become whole, complete, unbroken, pure, in order that I may hold the water, which is the divine bliss. This prayer in the text is built up by a number of clauses. the importance of physical purity comes first. First, cleanse your body. Cleanse the entire limbs of your body. Every limb of your body should be washed clean. Water purifies the human body, which is perpetually rendered unclean by various things. A clean body is an aid for a pure mind. The second line offers a problem of grammatical concord, which is somehow overcome by taking arbitrarily the plural verb to the singular in sense, or by taking the nominative to be the accusative. Brahmanav patir mam punatu. These are some problems of grammar which he is bringing in. Second stanza is both a prayer and an expiation for transgressions of the individual and collectivity. Expiation in English means prayaschitta. Kshama prarthana for the aparadha which we have committed, are committing, and perhaps continue to commit because of our ignorance. Continuously we are doing so many aparadhas, transgressions, for which we need to do prayaschitta. What are the transgressions? Not doing the spiritual practices at the proper time, indulging in so many practices which are unspiritual, indulging in talk which is worldly, slanderous, wicked, performing actions which are not prescribed by the holy scriptures, and above all, the greatest aparadha is forgetting our real nature, the supreme reality. I am that supreme reality, I am the Satchidananda Swarupa, I am the Nitya Buddha Shuddha Mukta Swabhava. I am eternally pure, eternally awakened, eternally free. I forget that and behave as if I am limited, as if I am small, as if I am narrow. My thought and behavior does not concord with the conviction which I ought to be having that I am a free, although embodied, awakened, although covered by ignorance, and pure, although covered by impurities. I am Nitya Buddha, Nitya Shuddha, Nitya Mukta. Forgetfulness of my real nature is the greatest aparadha. That's why so many stotras are composed by great men. Shankaracharya, for example, has wonderful aparadha kshamapana stotras. Stotras are hymns in which you pray, you cry, you ask for aparadha kshamapana. Chantavyo me aparadha Shiva 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 Bho Sri Mahadeva Shambho. Chantavyo me aparadha Prakatita radane kamarupe karale. So constantly you pray that you may be absolved of all the sins and the aparadhas. So this prayer is repeated in the Pratah Sandhya, Madhyana Sandhya, and the Sayam Sandhya. Individually and collectively, so many transgressions take place. So you pray for the expiation of the transgressions. Scrupulous avoidance of offences against the accepted code of religious conduct is possible only by the thoughtful and by painstaking, sincere, hard-working, true spiritual aspirants. Every moment be awake. Ask yourself, am I walking on the right path? The moment a wrong thought enters your mind, immediately there will be a signal. There is a beep within you which says, no, a thief is entering into me, drive him away. So this constant watchfulness and wakefulness is the sine qua non of spiritual progress and advancement. Be wide awake. Uttishtata jagrata prapya varan nibodhata. Kathopanishad. Swami Vivekananda is extremely fond of this. Arise and awake. And approaching the illumined ones, the great ones, the saints, know the secret of spirituality. Know about the Atman and Brahman, about God. Jagrata, be awakened. Be extremely careful. Be watchful. This is called in Vedanta apramatta. Pramada is forgetfulness, inattention, sleeping off, nidra, and apramada is awakening, watchfulness, being extremely careful and attentive. The Kathopanishad warns us, apramattas tada bhavati yogo hi prabhavapyayo. The aspirant, the spiritual person, becomes apramatta because this yoga will come and go. Suddenly you may realize that you have lost the little spiritual progress that you have made. You are happy that you are making some progress. Suddenly you slip away. You may slip any time. So be extremely watchful. Watch your steps, either by being extremely careful in the path of yoga and combining it with deep prayer to the Lord. Oh Lord, you guide me, you guide my steps. Every step of mine should be taken under your guidance. You catch hold of my hands and guide me. Sri Ramakrishna says beautifully, when the father is holding the hands of the child has no fear of slipping. But when the child is holding the father, the child may slip. So you tell the Lord, oh, you hold me. Consciousness of the intrusion of sin necessitates such a penitent prayer as this. You are conscious that some kind of obstacles are coming to you. Some sinfulness tendencies are sprouting within you because of hundreds of thousands of years of past samskaras. We are not to blame, but it is coming and oppressing you. We are watchful, we think. We are careful, we imagine. But in spite of our being careful and watchful and wakeful, suddenly you find all your great treasure of Viveka Vairagya, discernment between the real and the unreal, and this passion for all worldliness. This great treasure has been stolen away. You have been hijacked. Ram Prasad sang, Swami Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of this song. Oh mother, this is the great sorrow which grieves my heart. I feel so unhappy, so upset. Why? I am wide awake and watchful, that's what I think. And you are standing there to protect me as a sentry, but robbers and dacoits have entered my house and they have plundered all my spiritual wealth. What can be more tragic than this? আমি ওই খেদে খেদ করি, আমি ওই খেদে খেদ করি, তুমি মাতা থাকতে আমার জাগা ঘরে চুরি, জাগা ঘরে চুরি. So passionate and so touching. Jaga ghore churi means when I am awake, jaga, in my house, ghara, in ghar, churi, dacoity has taken place, robbery has taken place. Tumi mata thakte, you are my protectress, you are my mother, and you are protecting me, and I am awake, watchful, but still there has been robbery in my house. All my wealth has been plundered away. Why? Indriyas. My senses are not under control. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, chakshukarna, nasika, tvakjikhva. The 5 sense organs, the jnanendriyas, senses of perception. Pancha karmendriyas, vak, pani, pada, payu, upastha. These organs, senses of action and senses of perception, they are betraying me at every point. They are coming and attacking me and stealing away, and like dacoits, they are robbing me of all my spiritual wealth. Oh Mother, please save me. These are some penitent, deep, heartfelt prayers. Shankaracharya has a wonderful hymn to Vishnu as Lakshmi and Rasumaha. He says, "Oh Lord, I can't weep enough. I can't cry enough. You know what has happened to me? I had one Mahadhana, great treasure, with so much care and so much of sadhana. For years I got this treasure, carefully kept them under lock and key in my heart. And what a tragedy, my Lord. The 5 senses and of perception and the 5 senses of action, jnanendriyas and karmendriyas, invaded my house, and at gunpoint they stole away all my treasure and wealth. There is Viveka Mahadhana, great wealth of Viveka. And then, tying me hands and feet, they were thrown me into this nasty pit, abandoned well, and I am now crying, "Oh Lord, please help me. Lakshmi Rasumma Mama Dehi Karavalambam." Called Karavalamba Stotra. Kara Avalamba. Avalamba means refuge. Kara means by the hand. You give me refuge by your hand. You pull me by your hand. I am now crying in the deep pit of worldliness, hands tied, because these dacoits, the Indriyas, who I pampered for millions of lives. It's not anybody's fault. I pampered them. I thought they were my best friends. But how could I know these enemies have come, dacoits have come and plundered me? Andhasya me hritamahadhanasya choreif prabho balibhirindriya namadheyaihi. Andhasya me hrita viveka mahadhanasya choreif prabho balibhirindriya namadheyaihi. Mohanda kupa kuhare vinipatitasya Lakshmi Rasumma Mama Dehi Karavalambam. These are wonderful stotras which we should read, memorize, repeat, chant, cry. Andasya me hrita viveka mahadhanasya. Like a blind person, I was relying on my indriyas, my senses. Choraif prabho balibhir indriya namadheyaihi. They suddenly entered my house. broke open the doors and said, "Hey, come on, what do you have? Where is the key to the treasure which you have?" I said, "Sir, please don't take away my years of sadhana. I have been a monk at Belur Mutt for 45 years. Please don't take away. With great care I treasuring this Viveka. Please don't plunder them." "What do you mean?" "They slapped me and then took away." And what did they do to me? They tied my hands and feet and threw me into that huge, dilapidated, abandoned well and a pit. And I'm lying there and crying, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, please pull me." Lakshmi Rasumaha mamadehi karavalambam. I asked them, "Who are you? These senses, who are you? Like dacoits, you are so fat and stout and strong. You don't know us? You have pampered us for thousands of years. See, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha." These dacoits with huge masks. "Oh, you are my great friends, huh? That is friendship. Beat this fellow. Never trust your senses." This is the lesson we have learned from spiritual masters. Never trust your senses. These are greatest enemies unless you awaken them completely, restrain them. The Bhagavad Gita says, you are your best friend, you are your worst enemy. Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuho atmaiva ripuratmanaha bandhuratmatmanastaiva yenatmaiva atmanajataha. You should conquer your senses by yourself. Only a person who has conquered his senses can be established in the supreme truth. Indriyan indriyarthebhyastasya prajna pratisthita yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabam manaha tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matpara vashe hi yasya indriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, Sitaprajna Lakshana. Vashe yasya indriyani. Only a person who has completely brought his senses under complete control, only such a person is called Sthitaprajna, man of steady wisdom, and he is a Brahmajna, he is established in the Brahmi Sthiti, the state of Brahmanhood. So repeatedly you pray, you chant, you ask for guidance from God, you discriminate, you meditate. So many different ways, jnana, bhakti, karma and yoga, and try to elevate yourself. This is the Sandhya. Ramakrishna says, Sandhya merges into Gayatri. This is the Sandhya which is practiced. During Sandhya, you constantly pray for purification. So he says here, life is beset with these and many other offenses against the holy regulations, and so daily expiations and resolutions are provided in the routine of devotion. In the routine devotional practices, constantly practice expiation, prayaschitta, aparada bhanjana, aparada kshamapana, and purify yourself at every moment. Then will come the Madhyana Sayang Vandana, Sandhya Vandana, and then the Sayankala Sandhya Vandana. There are some more mantras which will say, when the sun is rising, all the great sins and offenses were committed during the night by my mind, by my thought, by my actions, by all my indriyas. All of them I pour as oblations into the great sun, and I stand completely absolved and purified of all these accretions and accumulations of sin. Then start the day. Again during midday. Again at the end, Sayam Sandhya Vandana, you light the lamp, the Agni, and then say, all the sins I have accumulated, all the accretions which has come to me, all the offenses I have done, all of them I offer to the Agni, and I stand purified and go to sleep. Again in the morning, again during midday, again during the night. Do it day after day, months after month, year after year, life after life. Then you come face to face with what is known as the purest of the pure, who is the Savitra Mandala, which is embodied by the Gayatri Mantra. So Sandhya merges into Gayatri. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.